Okay. Hello, everyone. Good afternoon. Welcome to this webinar, this interview. Welcome to the new MBA class of 2022. I would like to welcome our guest today. She's Gail McManus. Thank you very much, Gail, for being with us. So Gail is one of our trainers of the MBA program here in SDA Bocconi. And she's a founder, director, and senior consultant of a leading recruiting firm specializing in private equity based in London. And so she has a lot of experience in the industry, and the idea of this 15-20-minute video is to discuss together possible tips and information that you guys can have before coming on campus, so you get familiar with the content and the sector through one of our experts in the field. So I just wanted to ask you, Gail, a little bit more about yourself, if you don't mind to tell us about your story. How did you get to create your own firm, and what was your professional background before becoming a headhunter?
Well, thank you, Alfredo, and hello, everybody. It's so exciting to have the opportunity to talk to you like this today, ahead of me hopefully being with you on campus in December. So I'm really looking forward to that. So Alfredo, thank you for asking me my story. So let me just tell you a little bit about it, because I think there's some very interesting things about my background, which actually follow all the way through into how you can all think about your careers going forward. So as Alfredo said, my name is Gail McManus, and actually I'm the founder and managing director of PER, which stands for Private Equity Recruitment. It does what it says on the tin. But how did I get here? Well, actually, I started my life doing an MBA and went straight from my MBA, which was at London Business School, to join a firm called 3i. And 3i is a very large global private equity investment business. And I started life as an investor. And I joined 3i and I worked in one of their regional offices and I did deals. I did the job that many of you here want to and are looking forward to doing. And after about 6 years as an investor, and I'll tell you as we go through why I wasn't the greatest investor in the world. I wasn't the worst, by the way, but I wasn't the greatest investor in the world. I moved my job to focus on business development. And I used to work with all of 3i's teams right the way across Europe, helping them think about how to access deal flow and to win the opportunity to make investments. And I got to know a lot of people. And it's out of that I then changed my career into recruiting for private equity. So I'm not a recruiter by trade or training. I'm actually a self-taught recruiter. What I am, though, is a real expert in the private equity industry, and in particular in the people in that industry. And over the 40 years that I've been involved in private equity, and actually it is that long, I've really got to know about what's important in this recruitment process and what you need to have in your armory and in your skill set to be successful at getting the job. And it's really important that I emphasize that phrase, getting the job, because what I'm going to talk to you all about today and when we meet in December is about how to get the job, not how to do the job. All of you, after your MBA or your course at Bocconi, will have the skills to do the job, but will you have the ability to get the job? And that's the most important thing. So that's what I want to focus on today, really, getting the job. And of course, I have my own opinions about it, but I can tell you, I personally have placed hundreds of people in private equity roles, and my organization, PER, we're placing 300 or 400 people a year in private equity jobs. So we have a really good idea about how to get that job in private equity.
Okay, thank you very much for the introduction. This is the idea of this video indeed. Before coming into detail about how to get ready for that interview, and more specifically, I would like to ask about the landscape. How do you see in Europe, for instance, since our students will probably be focused on on these countries. How do you see the private equity landscape in countries like the UK or Germany or Netherlands? If you can just describe us very briefly, how do you see European landscape?
Well, look, the good thing is the whole of the private equity and alternatives market is growing and developing, which means that there are more and more opportunities for people, but you have to be positioned to get those opportunities. So the job market for private equity, and let's put it in its widest context, alternatives, is still really strong and growing. Positioning will be important. But what I would say to everybody is that you will all have heard of the household names, KKR, Blackstone, CVC, but actually there are hundreds and hundreds of investment organizations, many of which you'll never have heard of, but all of which offer exciting opportunities and careers. They're well funded, they do interesting investments, they're places where you can be compensated both financially and in terms of a stimulating career. So what I would advise everybody is you have to look past the household names. They are by far the most competitive to get into. You might aspire to them, that's great, but you've also got to be realistic about your chances of getting into those, and you've got to spread your search more widely. And what I would add, Alfredo, and to everybody here, is that we all think of straight down the line private equity investing, but there's actually so much more. There's infrastructure, there's private equity real estate, there's venture capital, a massively growing area for the right sort of people. And then we have a whole landscape around what I call the limited partner community. This is secondaries funds, fund investors, pension funds, massive sovereign wealth funds. And that's just for investment jobs. And if we then add on to that investor relations and fundraising, and then other forms of operations, so whether it's in the finance and accounting teams, or a big growth area, data analysis, or whether it's in tech or legal or HR, personnel, actually this is growing into a massive job opportunity. And the great thing for all of you is that private equity in all its forms is continuing to expand. And it's because of that growth that there are so many opportunities, but you've got to position yourself right for them.
Okay, this is a key question actually. Why is so selective? Since the market is growing a lot, and you said there are other brands not so well known as the big ones you mentioned before. Why is so selective to get inside?
Well, it's a really good question, and part of that is because whilst there are dozens and hundreds and maybe even thousands of firms, they're actually all quite small. So a typical venture fund may only have 20, 30, 40 people in it. A firm with 100 people is a big firm. A firm with 200 or 500 is a mega firm. And the problem that creates in the job market is that every single hire is one hire. And when somebody only wants to hire one person, they want that person to be 110% right for the job. Now, if they were going to hire 10 people or even 20 people, there's no way they'd find 20 people who are 110% right for the job. So what people who are hiring in volume do is they start to compromise a little bit on their ideal to get the number of people that they want. But in private equity, they don't have to do that. So they hold out for the person who is 110% right, that ticks all those boxes. And that's what makes it so hard. Hard for me, I can assure you, because every one of my placements is one. I can't do bulk hire of 10. Every one of my 400 placements is one hard won placement. But what I would say to you is that the bit that creates the real opportunity for you is the bit that comes between the tick box set of skills that they're looking for and the personality and fit that they're going to hire.
Okay.
One thing we might move on, and we'll certainly talk about in December, Alfredo, is we'll talk about the importance of networking and relationships. Because you know what? If you have the right network and the right relationships, all those tick box things they want are out of the window if you feel like the right person. And it's a very important thing to remember about this process.
Okay, clear, absolutely. So regarding this preparation of the for the next months, eventually until the market is going to open those opportunities, what would you suggest to our students to start preparing in the next month, including the summer? Is there any particular recommended reading or any sort of test or anything you can provide them with so much time in advance?
Yes, so I think we're going to send you some sort of links to various things you can do, but before we sort of detail on that, I think there's two things you can do to prepare, and they're opposite sides of the coin. The first is you need to get to know what this industry is and what it does. So there is a real technical element, if you like, a real sort of factual understanding of the firms, the organizations, and what they do. So become an avid reader. Every time you see in the Financial Times that, you know, KKR's just bought John Lang, I think, off the FTSE 250, you know, you must read those things. You've got to get a sense of what the private equity firms do. That's one thing. The other side of the coin, though, is much more personal, and that's about you. And I really urge you to think about what makes you an interesting person for these organizations. And I'll give you a little story, just a little tip, right? We had a client talk to us only last week, and they said, we've met 65 people. Crikey, they found 65 people to talk to who tick the boxes. I think I'd have had a tough job doing that. They said, we've met 65 people and they were so boring. I can tell you as a recruiter, you know, we want some of your personality to stand out here. So go away and have a think. What is it about me that people will find interesting? What have I done outside of my CV that makes me somebody that's engaging to talk to, that shows there's an alignment between my interests and what they do? Why might they enjoy having a conversation with me? So, you know what? I feel over the years that everything's got a bit formulaic. CVs have become quite formulaic. Well, actually, your CV should tell a story, and it's fine to tell a story like a story, not a list. And I think in interviews, people have become very rigid in how they talk. You know, we all sit straight and we want to engage, and that's fine. But actually, where's your personality? So I would urge you all to think about how are you going to get the real you out in these conversations. And you know what? The real you has more chance of getting a job than that rigid tick the box person. And also, if the real you doesn't get that job, it probably wasn't the right job for the real you anyway. So everybody gets to a better outcome. So it's the two things, right? Learn the facts, learn the industry, start to understand what it does. And the second bit is reach inside. What's your story? And be prepared to tell it.
Okay, absolutely. Regarding the interview process in particular, as you mentioned before, probably you will talk more about that in the workshop. But what are the main phases of the interview process in general, just to be ready for this motivational and fitting interview, as you mentioned, and probably a technical test? So just very briefly to explain our students how is the process about.
Yeah, so the processes are pretty standard in every role that you might go for. So there will be a first interview. First interview is largely about fit. Are you the sort of person we want to spend time with? Then there will be two types of skills tests. There will be a modeling test. This is for investment jobs. It'll be a little bit different for other jobs. There'll be some sort of modeling test, some sort of Excel-based test. And then there will be a case study, and the case study is about being commercial. And in fact, I will tell you one little extra thing you can do over the summer that'll help with your case study. So there'll be the case study, which is about your commercial insight. And then there'll be a final round, which is, did we get it right when we did the first round and the case study and the model? Is this somebody we still want to spend time with and would like to have in our organization? So think of it as 4 rounds. You might actually deal with 20 people in those 4 rounds, but it's basically those 4 rounds. So why don't I just skip back to what I said and give you your third piece of homework.
Mm-hmm.
And this is great practice for the case study. Every time now over the summer, you go out for a meal, or you go into a shop, or you deal with a business where you are going to buy something, I want you to think about that business model. So for example, you go to a restaurant, you look around you, you work out how many covers, how many people are sat there, right? What's the average spend going to be? What does that mean the business is going to have as its takings for a Wednesday night, right? How much is the wine? What do you think the margin is on that wine? Look around you. When is the place going to need refurbishing? How much is that going to cost? And what about the staff? Are there enough of them? What's the quality? What are the bathrooms like? Is this somewhere I'm going to come back to? Who do I think of all this staff is stealing vodka out of the storeroom? I want you to sit there and look at it as a business owner, because that is what an investor is. They are a business owner. If you own that restaurant, right? If you own that shop, if you own the company that was selling the water that you bought, what's the business model? What's critical to the success of that business? And are you making any money? And that's your best practice, you know, because the thing is, businesses are real live things run by real live people who make mistakes. And sometimes they get it right and sometimes they get it wrong. A business isn't a spreadsheet. It's a real live living organism. And you need to practice being commercial, thinking commercial. What's important to the customer? What's critical to the success of this business?
Okay, clear. Very good advice. So together with this commercial acumen, what other requirements will you underline that are important in a candidate for private equity?
Yes, well, and you know what, I think these are the main things, but the thing is, you remember it's a competitive process, so you have to be the best at them all, right? You have to be the best in engaging with the firm and the people in it. You have to be the best at doing the model, and you have to be the best at doing the case study. And you have to be the best at keeping up your energy and enthusiasm through the process so you get to the end. So, you know, remember, it's not just you. And I'll give you a sense of the competitiveness, right? For each of our roles, we start with about 300 people at the top of the funnel. We split that down to probably interview ourselves 30 of those. So 1 in 10 we interview. And of those 30, we probably only present 6 to the client. Right, so that's 6 out of 30, 1 in 5. So think about that. 1 in 50 get the job.
Right, amazing.
Well, actually, no, 1 in 50 get on the shortlist. Only 1 in 300 gets the job.
Just one, exactly, just one from 300.
Yeah. So that's the level of competition. So you've got to say, there's always going to be someone better than me. So how am I going to stand out? And by the way, that's about thoughtfulness. It's not about fancy CVs with strange logos on and weird layouts. None of us can be bothered, you know, but it's about displaying the things that are important. Right.
So how is it possible to stand out from the crowd in all these competitive landscape? What would you suggest to be that one?
And we'll talk a lot more about this when I come in December, but I think the one thing that really makes a difference is to be able to show that you think and talk like a buyer. And thinking and talking like a buyer is a skill. And let me give you a quick example. So I spoke to 2 people recently who'd worked on the same transaction. And one of these, as advisors, they were both advisors, they worked on the same transaction, but they were applying for a job as an investor, i.e. as a buyer. And the first one said, this is a fantastic business. It's going to open another 100 outlets. It'll be so profitable, we'll be able to IPO it. And the second one said, this is an interesting business. The CEO is very charismatic. And if he can lead his team to deliver another 100 outlets or so over the next 12 months, well, we might have something very valuable. Right? One person tried to sell me the business. The other one talked like a buyer. So that's what makes the difference. I think the people who either through practice or innately, because that's how they think, see businesses from a buyer's perspective.
Okay, super good advice. Regarding to this topic about since you have seen hundreds of thousands probably of candidates, can you just share with us maybe one good example of a candidate who did a good performance during the interview? Something was like he or she did in a particular way, and a bad example, or somebody who didn't perform as you were expecting. I mean, what is just according to your experience, and one good and bad example of candidates?
Yeah, well, I can give you the simplest one, the good ones prepare and the bad ones don't. Okay. And, let's just think about this whole process, should we? No actor will go on the stage without rehearsing. And this is exactly the same as this process. This is a 1-hour interview at the beginning of the process that can literally change the course of your life. Why would you not practice? And so it is this combination of being prepared and not being prepared. Right? Someone who walks in the room and says, yeah, I've got to be out soon and I've got 3 other interviews this afternoon and I'll choose whether I want this job or not, won't get the job. It's the person who walks in and says, Gail, I think PR is a really interesting business. And you know what I can bring to your business? I've got some contacts in my network that can bring you more recruitment mandates. I've met 50 people recently who are going for associate jobs. I know exactly what a good associate looks like, right? It's people that you think, wow, he's thought about or she has thought about what's important to me. And that is what makes the difference.
Okay. Good to know. Okay, thank you for the advice. Just very, very last question. Any final remark, any final tip before coming, of course, on campus in December and meeting our students more in deep about the interview process? Any final advice from your side to those students from the class that how to, besides the reading, besides the preparation of the CV and all the technical sides, any final remark from the side?
Well, actually, maybe I'll just go to the sort of toolkit information that we're going to send out. And although you have to buy this book, and it was written by a friend of mine, I don't get any credit. There's a book that's written by a real investor. It's called In Search of Thursday, weird title, but that's what he called it. And it is actually a real life account of exactly what it was like at 3i while I was there. And although the deals have got bigger, the principles are exactly the same. And it's written by an amateur. He's not a professional author. And so I think you get a real sense of this whole thing I've been talking about. What are the bathrooms like in the business, in the restaurant? Who is stealing vodka from the storeroom? What is it that really makes it tick? And it also gives you a sense of the negotiations of the deal, because that's not easy. And you get a sense of what makes a winner in investment, someone who wins the deals and someone who doesn't. So, but it's a really easy read. You can get through it in a couple of 3 hours on a Saturday afternoon. It's not hard work. It's not a textbook, but it does really evoke what the job is and what it's like to do it. And frankly, if you read that book and loved every second of it, the job is for you. If you read that book and thought, you know what, I don't enjoy this at all, then actually that's great. It's probably not the right industry for you at all. Not that much has changed in 25 years, really. So that's what I would say. But you know what? The other thing is, most of all, enjoy your summer, won't you? Because you are going to be working so hard once you get to Bocconi that you need to be relaxed, refreshed, and ready for anything and everything that your MBA is going to throw at you.
Absolutely, this is very, very good final remarks. I won't add anything else because it's the same advice I will tell them. So enjoy your summer, and of course I appreciate your time. Also useful, very precious advices and recommendations from your side. We will have the time to meet you again in December with the students in class. And have a nice summer, Gail. Thank you very much. And we'll see you soon then.
Thank you, everybody. Fantastic. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.